Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to another episode of Hindu Business Line's Field Notes, the weekly podcast on all things agribusiness. You can find us on our website www.businessline.in. Field Notes is available on all podcasting platforms such as Apple and Google Podcasts and Spotify. You can watch us on Business Line's YouTube channel now. For feedback and comments, or if you want us to discuss any issue in particular, you can write to me. My email is in the description. Right, today we will be talking about cow belches, burps, and farts. No, this is not a laughing matter. Livestock produce nearly 90 million tons of methane every year, and methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gases with the ability to trap 25 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Cattle are the top agricultural source of greenhouse gases worldwide. Each year, a single cow belches and farts roughly 200 kilos of methane. And India has by far the world's largest cattle population. And therefore, in climate change discussions, often its farming sector is the target of activists. To discuss this issue, we are joined today by Dr. Raghavendra Bhatt. Dr. Raghavendra Bhatt is the director of the National Institute of Animal Nutrition and Physiology, NIANP, based in Bangalore. NINP is part of the Indian Council for Agriculture Research. Dr. Bhatt is India's leading expert on enteric methane emissions. Thanks to his research, India has been able to map state-wise livestock methane emissions. Not just that, he and his colleagues have developed cattle feed that can cut methane emissions by as much as 25%. Last year, he received a patent for an innovative feed method that uses husk from tamarind seeds to cut emissions. Tamarind seeds otherwise have no commercial value. Dr. Bhatt, welcome to Field Notes.
Thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very fine. Welcome to Field Notes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dr. Bhatta, tell us why enteric methane emissions, while it may sound like a laughing matter, the farts and burps of cows and livestock, why is this a major challenge for global warming?
Yeah, at the outset, let me thank you for the invitation. Let me take a couple of, just a minute to introduce the institute before I start the subject.
Mhm.
The National Institute of Animal Nutrition and Physiology is an ISO 9001 2015 certified institute under the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. And it's a 25-year-old institute, relatively young. And right now we have 39 scientists working here. The institute is established to conduct basic and fundamental research in animal nutrition and physiology. And we have three major challenges. The first challenge is, as you know, the quality of feed resources and availability. And the second is the livestock physiology and the reproduction part. And the last one is, it is not the last one, but is the most important one, is the climate change. And now coming to the specific this subject, like why it is so important. As you know that we have in India have a quinquennial livestock census. That means we have every 5 years we have a livestock census. And the last livestock census was in the year 2017. So that is the latest one we have. Before that we had in 2012. And before that we had in 2007. So as per the latest livestock census, we have 193 million cattle. We have 109 million buffaloes, then 149 million goats, and we have around 74 million sheep. And you also should know that India is producing around 200 million tons of milk, which is the highest in the world.
Mhm.
Now, yes, these are the positive part of it, and we should also
That would
know
make
that.
India the country with the largest livestock population.
You're right. No, livestock population in the sense, if you look at the buffaloes, we are the second, and if you look at the goat, again the numbers are different. But roughly, we say, we have as far as the milk production is concerned, we are the highest. Okay, so it was around 180, then 190. Now we say almost about 200 million tons. And the requirement, if you look at the requirement for milk by 2030, again, the forecast is around another 100 million tons. So basically, because of the reason that one thing is, no, see, India is the only country where we have a habit of fluid milk consumption. That is the liquid milk consumption. But you look at if you go to European Union or maybe in the US, you don't find people drinking liquid milk. So they prefer to have milk products,
Mhm.
okay, like your cheese or yogurt or some flavored milk or of course butter and things like that. But India is one country, I think traditionally we have a habit of drinking milk. Not only young children, even the adults also feel that having a glass of milk is always highly nutritious. Now, with the change in the lifestyle and also the purchase power, we expect that this consumption of these milk products will go up. As on date, our the conversion of the milk to milk products is relatively low as compared to other countries. And we are expecting that it will cross roughly around 50% or 60% of the milk gets converted into the product.
Mhm.
So invariably, so now we go to any malls, so you can see a lot of this. See, earlier it was very difficult to find. Now you can see a whole range of cheese. Not only one cheese, you have the cheddar cheese and so many cheese, and you have flavored milk, and you have yogurt. And so obviously, people are tend to buy these, thinking because of this nutrition value, all that. So we expect that the milk consumption is likely to go up, and so we have to produce more. So to produce more, see, there are different options. See, the horizontal expansion is not an option with us because we don't have, as you know, that because more and more urbanization takes place, we don't have that much of land for. Earlier, you remember there is something like a community grazing land where the animals are let loose. They used to graze and come back. Now,
Mhm.
slowly, that is called the extensive system of rearing. Now, from there, we are going for the semi-intensive system of rearing, wherein the animals are uh, have a limited amount of grazing land. Then the last one is the intensive system of rearing, where typically in the heart of Bangalore city, you see some excellent dairies, well maintained. It's an intensive system of rearing where tie the animals in a well ventilated shed and give them with the excellent feed and fodder. So now coming to the question of this enteric methane emission, see, I have to give a little brief for the audience. If, for example, if they are not used to what exactly is the rumen or the fermentation, so
Please do.
unless the human beings or the pigs or the poultry or dog, uh, we call the ruminants like the cattle, buffalo, sheep, and goat. They have four chambers in the stomach. Okay, we are called the simple stomach animals. Okay, like human beings and dog, cat, and poultry and pig. Whereas in the ruminants, there are four chambers. The first chamber is called the rumen. The second is called the reticulum, then the omasum and the abomasum. So, and the abomasum is the true stomach part of this particular animal. So, initially, it is a fermentation which takes place in the rumen. And whatever they see, we don't feed them in a high quality diet unless until intensive system of rearing. We feed them with the fodder, we feed them with the grasses, we feed them with the all sorts of byproducts and a paddy straw, the wheat straw, and all sorts of straw. So all these things, they get fermented in the rumen. In the rumen, there is a symbiotic relationship between they have the bacteria, they have the fungi, then we have the protozoa and the archaea. Okay, so when the fermentation takes place, they release the short-chain volatile fatty acid called the acetic, butyric, and the propionic acid. In this process, and this bacteria and the protozoa, there is a huge amount of gas getting produced. So to just to give an example, when 10 kg of feed is fermented, we get around around 3 kgs of volatile fatty acids, around 250 liters of carbon dioxide, and the same amount, whatever the extra hydrogen is produced, that gets converted into a methane.
Mhm.
Okay, so this methane get burped out when they're in the expiration takes place, when the animal expired gas, it mixes with the CO2 and methane, it comes out. And two reasons, why it is so important. That the first reason is around 10% of the whatever the energy the animal consumes, it goes for the production of methane. So it's a wastage of, basically it's a wastage of biological energy.
Mhm.
Okay, so and energy is a very, very critical nutrient for the production. For example, 10% is, especially for the Indian condition, it's a lot of energy. So, and the second is this methane is 25 times more powerful as a greenhouse gas as compared to methane. To tell you in a simple words, production of 1 ton of methane is equal to around 25 tons of carbon dioxide. So
Mhm.
that's what, so global warming potential of this is very high, and it is a wastage of biological energy. So as veterinarians and as animal nutritionists, and if you're able to cut down or reduce this enteric methane emission, and that much portion of biological energy which is going for methane gets converted into productive functions, because as you know, the law of energy, so once the energy gets diverted from one form to other, so invariably, this energy gets goes for the production functions. In case of maybe growing animals, when it is has a fully functional rumen, more than 3 months, so this will go for its growth. And in case of adult animals, if it is a producing animal, for example, it's a dairy cow, this energy gets converted for productive function. That is a milk.
Mhm.
And on an average, an adult cattle, Indian cattle, we say they, of course, basically it depends on the diet. Okay, let me make one point very clear. So when we say it's 200 liters, the adult cattle produces around 200 liters of methane per day,
Mhm.
right? And in case of growing heifers, it may be around 85 to 95 liters, something around 100 liters. And in case of sheep, it is around 20 to 25 liters. And uh, as I mentioned, that every kg of methane is almost equal to around 55.65 megajoules of energy. So it's a wastage of energy. So two things are there. I'll just deviate from here. And coming to the inventory component of this, see, India has been always blamed for producing a very high amount of enteric methane emission as compared to the Western countries. They're just talking about India is producing so much of methane, which is responsible for global warming and all that. So unfortunately, we didn't have a credible inventory. People
Mhm.
have tried.
What
There's
do you
an
what do you
international
mean when you say inventory of methane? And
inventory.
also,
Invent.
also I would like you to juxtapose the amount of enteric methane emission in India and compare it with the world. How much would be the total annual global enteric methane emission, and how does India compare given its very large cattle population?
Yeah, I'll come to that point. So the inventory is the total amount of enteric methane that is being produced in India. That's a figure.
Hmm.
Okay, so we call it as, people call it a database, or we call it as inventory. See, like the way we have the livestock census. How do we have the livestock census? As I mentioned, so we have the quinquennial livestock census, and based on that, so similarly, inventory means what is the amount of enteric methane emission that is produced by these ruminants. There are different sources of that, so I'll restrict myself to only the inventory component as far as the enteric methane is concerned. Now, there's an international organization called the IPCC. It is a UN body. It is called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So they give the country-wise value. For example, in India, they give a value saying that if you use this value, you can calculate the enteric methane emission. So people have started working on that. They are all based on the secondary data, not the primary data. So National Institute of Animal Nutrition Physiology, being a premier institute, we thought we should develop our own inventory based on the primary data. So we started working. It's almost last 10 to 15 years efforts. So we came out with a figure. It's something around roughly around 9 teragrams. Teragrams refers to million tons. That means our livestock is producing around 9 million tons of methane, enteric methane emission per year. If you compare it with the global enteric methane emission, it is about 90. So globally, the enteric methane emission from the livestock is around 90, and whereas we are producing roughly around 9 million tons. And globally, the manure methane, which is not the subject of my discussion, means manure means, as you know, all when the manure you let loose, or you get gobar gas, which is also methane. So globally, they are producing around 10 million tons of manure methane, whereas our contribution is just one, because we have a traditional way of converting this manure into the dung cakes, and we don't allow too much of these lagoons, except the poultry. In case of piggery. So we don't have too much of lagoons, where the methane gets emitted. Now, this is the relative contribution of the. So, as far as the global value is concerned, our contribution, I personally feel, is very low. I would like to add one more point here. So, when we talk about enteric methane emission, so we should not be talking in isolation, right? So we have the social issues. Okay, it is not only that the animals are rare only for the milk. Okay, we have very important social fabric of the Indian culture. We worship these animals, and it is
But doctor,
also
but
sense.
it seems this, a 10% contribution of enteric methane seems rather substantial.
Yeah,
10% of.
no, relatively. See, if you look at the what is the contribution of the livestock to the annual GDP, right? So compared to that, this 10%, I personally feel is not a big figure. And second thing I would like to add here, there needs to be a clarification on this, because there's something called a life cycle assessment, LCA. We call it as LCA. LCA takes into account the carbon footprint of, for example, the livestock production in the US. Okay, so the corn that is being produced, the amount of fertilizer being added, the carbon footprint of the fertilizer application, then the harvesting component, then the transportation component, then the storage component, then the processing component. All these have to be taken into account. So you take particularly Indian conditions. For example, the amount of fertilizer application is very low as compared to that of the US or the other developed countries. And we are not going to process a paddy straw. There's nothing like a processing here. So our carbon footprint as well as the processing is negligible. The transportation cost is very low, and we don't transport a very long distance. So carbon footprint of the transportation is also very low. And the storage component, see, we are simply storing the dry forage. So there is nothing like an air condition and all that. So if you look at the LCA approach, take into all account, because right now we don't have a full-fledged data, and we are also working on that. So our contribution is not that significant. But as far as the animal nutritionists, as far as the veterinarians are concerned, yes, why we are talking about enteric methane emission is like it's a sensitization for all the people, that you should also know that we are contributing. But in the not only it is a global warming aspect of it, we are also looking at how to reduce the energy wastage. So that way I consider as a more important rather than significant, because many people make really hue and cry about so not taking into account the social aspect, the socio-economic aspects of the farmers, especially the medium and the low landholders. So for them, it's a and see, look at the farmers. Tomorrow you go and tell him, see, your cattle is producing so much of methane. This is a climate issue. What are you trying to do? He said, I'm not really concerned about it. You please talk about, the air conditioner you people are using, the transportation you are using, the aircraft you are using, and other things you are using. And this is a poor animal, which is a livestock, which is everything for me. And it is also giving about 2 to 3 liters of milk. It also gives manure, and it is a social security for me. So we have to look into that aspect as well, rather than talking only about hitting one nail. No, it is enteric methane emission, it is a livestock. I think that's not a correct approach to discussing a national issue. So we have to have a holistic approach as far as the enteric methane emission is concerned.
Mhm. Dr. But as a scientist, you have been working both on, as you described, on the mapping of enteric methane emission in India, and also on mitigating it. Uh, could you tell us about, if I look at on your website, if I look at the enteric methane emission map, most of it seems concentrated in the north of India.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Is
about.
it just a population issue where concentration of cattle is more, or are there any other mitigating factors in the south?
Yeah, yeah. What we wanted to do here is, see, once you have the inventory, what we did as compared to the IPCC default value, based on the livestock census and based on the feeding practices. And earlier we had a mega project with the 22 centers all over the country. So we documented what are the feed resources that is being fed to the livestock. Then we collected these samples and estimated what is the methane production potential. For example, methane production potential of the paddy straw or wheat straw or finger millet straw or maize cardabi or jawar straw, and different diet combinations of throughout the country. We screened, a large number of diet sample as well as the individual ingredients. We came out with the methane production potential of different regions, and based on that we came out with the state specific value. So instead of having one value for the whole country, we came out with the enteric methane emission for different states. And based on that, we pooled it and we came out with figure something around 9 teragrams. Now, once we know that, this is the enteric methane emission from the Indian livestock, we also try to identify some of the hotspots.
Mhm.
The idea of identifying hotspots, which I think you must have seen in our website, is that, so if you really want to address the methane issue, you address those states where the enteric methane emission is very high. And if you see that Karnataka is not figuring in the hotspot. Okay, so what we have said, that those states which are producing more than 5% of the inventory, so that
Mhm.
only we have taken into account. For example, if you see, you don't see Punjab and Haryana, you don't see
Mhm.
Karnataka.
Which are the hotspots?
Yeah, so hotspots are starting with Uttar Pradesh, then we have Madhya Pradesh, we have Rajasthan, we have undivided Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. So these are the, starting with the Uttar Pradesh. Yeah, as you know, it's a good question you asked, whether it's basically because of the livestock numbers or it is also because of the feeding management. It is a combination of both. See, generally what happens when you have more number of indigenous animals, like our, uh, 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 unlike the crossbred animals, like, Holstein Friesian or Jersey. So the feeding management of these crossbred
This
animals
is
are always,
Sindhi or Tharparkar varieties, the desi
yeah,
cows that we call
Sahiwal, we
Sahiwal.
can talk about, yeah, Sahiwal, Kankrij, Gir, Dioni, or Malnad Gidda. There are
Mhm.
so many. So they are the
Mhm.
indigenous breeds. So as compared to that, the milk production in crossbred are always, we know, they are, on the higher side. So invariably, the feeding practices for the crossbred animals are better as compared to the indigenous right now.
Mhm.
Okay, so though we know that, the Sahiwal and Gir have very high milk production potential, but unfortunately, the during the as you know, that the white revolution, we started this crossbreeding, and we were able to see, one of the reasons why India is able to produce so much of milk in is basically because of the crossbreeding. Now the
Mhm.
government of India has taken a decision that, so we should also conserve our indigenous breeds. Okay, let me not deviate. So the hotspots refers to those areas where the enteric methane emission is on the higher side. So if you really want to start to address the enteric methane emission, please start with those places where the enteric methane emission is high, rather than starting concentrating on maybe on Tamil Nadu or Karnataka or Kerala or Punjab or Haryana. So start working on those areas where you can reduce the enteric methane emission.
Are
It
you
is
saying that
it
it is
is
also a function of more concentration of native breeds of cows?
No, it is a no. Basically, it is the diet.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have been working on this area because sometimes, people ask, whether the indigenous animals are producing more methane as compared to crossbred, whether the buffaloes are producing more methane as compared to the crossbred animals.
Mhm.
So we have been working on this area. So recently we developed, an exhaustive data, and it clearly indicates it is not that animal which makes the difference. It is the diet. For
Mhm.
example, if you feed the same diet to cattle, buffaloes, indigenous as well as the crossbred, so there is no significant difference as far as the enteric methane emission is concerned. So it is the see if you look at Gujarat, if you look at Karnataka, so as you know that the dairy is so well established, the Amul model, and ours is in Karnataka Milk Federation. So like our Nandini brand. So people are so much concerned about feeding of the animals, and the cooperative movement is so well established that people are feeding better as compared to those areas where this dairy is not that well developed. Maybe that animals are not fed with a very high concentrate diets. So I would like to just add here, for example, when the animals, when the cattle and buffaloes are fed with the very coarse diet, like for example, byproducts, your paddy straw or wheat bran or any of the dry fodder, the enteric methane emission is very high.
Mhm.
And if you feed them with any of the concentrate, now concentrate mean maybe cattle feed or your compounded feed or any green grass or legumes or cereal grains, the methane production comes down. So one of the ways or the simplest way to reduce enteric methane emission is we call it is a concept of ration balancing. When you know that animals are fed not as per the requirement, they are fed more of this the roughage based diet. If you feed them with some of the concentrate, the enteric methane emission is going to get reduced. So basically, wherever you see the enteric methane emission is lower, are those areas where these animals are, the dairy is very well developed. It is a
Okay.
cooperative movement, and animals, the farmers are. So when dairy is taken as an enterprise, okay, and well established cooperative sector, a lot of milk production, a lot of these milk products. Classical example is your Amul and Nandini, where you have so the milk production is very high. So invariably the animals are fed a better diet as compared to those areas where the dairy is not well developed, or the animals are fed with a relatively a lower quality of diet. So
Mhm.
ideally, enteric methane amelioration, which we have been working on that the primarily, if you can feed them with a better diet. So if you see our website, we have developed a software. Okay, it's called Feed Assist, and there are two. One is a feed chart, and there is a feed assist. And this feed assist is available in an Android version. And I'd like to share with the viewers that if somebody is interested to download, and they can contact us. So it's a simple version where all the raw materials have been listed, and what you have to do, you should know the body weight of the animals, and there is also a way to calculate. If you know the length and the girth, the heart girth and the length, you can calculate roughly around 350 kg or 375 kg. And if you also identify which are all the raw materials, the feed resources that are available with you, and you have to just select. And this particular software will tell you, for example, the an adult dairy cow producing around 12 liters of milk, weighing around 300 kg body weight, and you have feed resources like groundnut cake or soybean meal or wheat bran or de-oiled rice bran, a bit of paddy straw, some maybe some green available with you. So you select these, and immediately it will tell you for this particular animal how much of feed you are supposed to give. And
Mhm.
this is not only a least cost ration, and it also a balanced ration. By virtue of the balanced ration, the enteric methane emission is also quite low. So this is the first the approach or the strategy, if you really want to say how to reduce enteric methane emission. And this is easier way to even to tell the farmer that, for example, see you have these materials. Generally, I'll tell you, if you go to the field condition, what they do, whatever is available is fed to the animals. For example, during the rainy season, the animals are fed with only greens,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
during the summer season, the animals are fed with only dry. So we don't have a concept of preserving this, material when they are in excess. For example, converting them into silage and keeping them during the lean season. And for example, if they have some, maybe if they are going some legumes, they have some husk, maybe like, for example, your black gram husk or Bengal gram husk. So a combination of mixing of many things and feeding to the animal always is better. See, for example, if you look at our own human diet, see, we don't only eat rice. Okay, we have a combination of sometimes we rice with a bit of wheat with some vegetables and things like so. That is called a wholesome diet or the complete
Mhm.
diet. So, and the farmers are advised to feed this complete diet or the total mixed ration. The
Mhm.
second strategy or the approach which we have been working on, that which have been listed also, and which Mr. Vivek was also talking about, that after extensive research, we have identified that if we are able to feed them, see, most of these the tree leaves, whether it is in the north or in the south, they contain a polyphenolic compound. They are generally called, we call it as tannins, or sometimes they also contain some saponins and some essential oils and all that. So these tannins have earlier, few years back, tannins are described as anti-nutritional factors.
Mhm.
Okay, so because they are called the bitter principles, and this is a classical example. For example, if you eat a raw tamarind, okay, you can see your tongue almost, it becomes after some time start feeling really thick. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if you some leaves, if you put it on your mouth, it will start bitter principles. So they are called the bitter
Mhm.
principles.
Like
And
the pan also,
at
right?
yes. So at a very high level, these are anti-nutritional factors. But if you identify the source and the best dose, optimum dose, if you feed them, you can exploit them to reduce enteric methane emission. So we have been working on this approach, and we have screened a lot many tree leaves that are available in the north and in the northeast and in the south.
Last year you received a patent for a new product to mitigate enteric methane emissions. Tell us about that.
Yeah, now at this point, I'd like to share with you that based on the extensive research which I was talking about, these the phenolic constituents,
Mhm.
and we came out with a product. We call it as Haridhara. Haridhara refers to, it's a Hindi term. It's green earth. So basically, the product, of course, for this also we have another patent, and the composition cannot be disclosed at this moment. So basically, what it does when we use Haridhara, that not only reduces the protozoa which are responsible for production of this the very high hydrogen concentration in the rumen, and there'll also be a shift in the fermentation, which was I was talking about when you feed with a lot of these byproducts like the paddy straw or wheat straw, whatever it is. So there's a shift in the fermentation from acetic butyric to propionic acid. So the propionic acid is a natural hydrogen sink in the rumen. So that way, Haridhara acts by changing the fermentation pattern as well as a partial reduction of the protozoa. In turn, we'll get around 17 to 20% reduction in the methane. Okay, you may ask me, like, why not 100% reduction in the methane? Why only 20%? So, if you are making a 100% reduction in the methane emission, means we are converting a rumen into a
Mhm.
simple stomach animal. So, which is practically not possible, also not feasible, and we are not supposed to do it, because
Mhm.
the beauty of the rumen environment is that the animal can consume or convert the large quantity of byproducts which are available. For example, it's a big industry. The Compound Livestock Feed Manufacturer Association in India. Feed industry itself is a very big industry which the animals. So we have no intention to convert, and this should not become another competitor to human food. Okay,
Mhm.
so all along we are mentioning, see, for example, poultry, like, a lot of soybean is being used for poultry feed, a lot of corn is going for poultry feed, and more or less, sometimes, in for pigs. And whereas cattle and buffaloes, they are not competing with your human food, because most of them they feed only on the byproducts. Okay, whether the de-oiled cakes, or the broken rind or broken
Mhm.
rice or it's a wheat bran. So the question, many people ask why only 17 to 20%. When so if we go beyond 20%, invariably, you'll have some alteration in the fermentation pattern, and the whole the ecosystem of the rumen get disturbed. So we are not going
Mhm.
beyond that. And even this 20% of reduction in the methane emission is quite substantial. What we have seen is a pilot study conducted in the lactating animals has seen that even with this 20% reduction, so the farmer is able to get around 250 ml of more milk in case of lactating animals. Now, even if you say that the milk procurement is around 30 rupees per liter at the cooperative level, so the cost benefit ratio of this Haridara preparation is around 1 is to 3.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you invest one, the farmer is going to get 3 rupees benefit out
Doctor,
of it.
but
And
interestingly, you have used, I believe, the husk of tamarind seeds. That seems rather interesting. It's a waste product. There are no commercial uses for it.
yeah,
So
so
you've
basically,
been able to
yeah,
extract something out of it and use it for methane
no,
mitigation.
no. So basically, that is the whole concept. The approach is a waste to wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we don't see many times, anything you talk about amelioration, you say, okay, for example, tomorrow you come out with a pill and tell the farmer, you feed this and 10 rupees per pill and it is going to reduce methane. So he will not be interested. So here, our interest is to see that those products which are otherwise are being wasted or being used as a manure or maybe something like for literally thrown out. So if you are able to do that, so tamarind seed, his husk is one of the components we have screened, and we have seen that it is really working well. So, and in that we were able to that dose and all that we'll not be able to disclose because
Mm-hmm.
it has a patent on it. So that is the thing. If for example now tomorrow an industry comes and says, okay, I would like to take this particular Haridara technology. So what he can do is there are two ways of using this. The one way is he can manufacture a supplement as per the formulation, and he can give it to the farmer. Okay, maybe on a farmer self-help group or a cooperative society. So every day they should feed around 250 grams in the morning, 250 grams in the evening, and you can see the improvement in their milk yield. And otherwise, if delivery of this product is an issue, what he can do, he can use it in the compound livestock feed itself. So it can replace a part of the wheat bran or maybe de-rice bran. So both these wheat bran and rice bran are relatively more expensive as compared to Haridara. Haridara cost around 6 rupees per kilo, whereas you don't get any conventional raw material, less than 10 or 11 rupees per kg. So as an industry, so straight away you are going to get around 3 to 4 rupees of per kg.
Mm-hmm.
So you convert into 10. Okay, so you convert into maybe the whole, for example, if somebody is producing 1,000 tons of feed or 2,000 tons of feed or 3,000 tons of feed per month. So accordingly, you see the benefit. And in turn, you are doing dual advantage. The farmer is getting benefited by the extra amount of milk he is going to get by view of the reduced methane emission. And because of the enteric methane reduction, so obviously you are doing a lot good for keep this ambience as clean, as green as possible. So you are preventing the global warming. And
Mm-hmm.
now we are also working on other area, and which I thought I'll share with you. Now there are some seaweeds which also have been tested to be very efficient as far as the enteric methane emission is concerned. And especially, we have a collaborative now initiative with another institute called Central Institute of Fishery Technology, CAFT, Cochin. And what they are doing is the CAFT are extracting some of the nutraceuticals from the seaweed. So after extracting the nutraceuticals, whatever the left out is there, which are available in a large quantity, otherwise it is thrown. So that we have tested, and they also have very potent anti-methanogen properties, which are working on that, and already a patent is on the in the pipeline. So, ultimately, what we are looking at, I would like to share here is, see, it is not that one pill which works for the whole country. It is not a one pill therapy. So, our idea is region specific, resource available mitigation or the emulation technology. For example, what is in South, jack leaves, some of the neem leaves, if you are able to feed it to the animals, they also reduce methane emission.
You
And
mean
if you go,
jackfruit leaves?
yeah, jackfruit leaves and even
Mm.
the neem leaves, and a very small quantity. If you are able to feed it to the animals, they also reduce methane emission. And if you go to the north, especially in Rajasthan and those areas, there is a tree called Prosopis cineraria. It is in common term, it's called kejri, and which is highly palatable, and they are also very rich in tannins. So they are also able to reduce enteric emission. So not we are not telling that this is one strategy which can be used for the whole country. So
Right.
at different places, because ultimately it should be economically viable, practically feasible, and it should be as simple as possible. It should not be too complicated as far as the feed industry is concerned. So they are also looking at something which the density should not change, the color should not change, the palatability should not get affected. So all these parameters are looked into when we are screening this material and coming out with this particular product. And I'm sure that many people are interested in that, and the negotiations are going on. And other thing I tell you, even the government at the government level, they can take a policy decision. For example, now neem coated urea, it's a decision taken by the government of India that whatever the urea you are producing, it has to be essentially coated with neem, so that there should not be an adulteration. So tomorrow, government of India, Animal Husbandry Department comes out with a policy decision and order saying that all the feed that are being manufactured in India, compound feed, should essentially contain an anti-methanogenic substance of anything, not necessarily tamarind seed husk or something else. So then what happens, throughout India, the total animal feeds are going to, whatever the animals are going to consume these feeds, they are, reducing enteric methane emission. So the whole quantity of enteric methane emission, now we are talking about something around maybe 9. Even if you reduce by around to 20%, so substantially it gets reduced by maybe something around 7, which is, I think, is a very practicable and a novel approach to reduce enteric methane emission from the Indian livestock.
Thank you very much for joining us today and talking about this much neglected issue we
Pleasure.
were knowing
Pleasure.
about.
So I would like to also add here, this is not only one area which NNP is working on, and we are also working on the physiology and reproduction aspect, which also, I think, given an opportunity, maybe something can be shared with
Sure,
you.
we will
And
soon.
yeah, and the quality feed and feed resources is another area where, for that also we have many approaches. We have grain sprouts, which is a new concept, and we also something like a reprofat, because the low milk fat syndrome is another issue in the farm conditions where the animals, the milk is procured based on the lactometer reading. Sometimes they find it very difficult to see to it that the grading is very low. So we have another product, we call it as Reproprat Plus. There are many things which can be shared with you. So thanks
Sure,
so much
sure.
for
We
the
look forward.
opportunity. Yeah,
Thank you.
I feel
Thank
it,
you.
it is only a beginning. Thank you. Good day.
Yes. Listeners, goodbye and God bless until we meet next week.